Hello and welcome into the Locked On Wolves postcast following the Timberwolves win over the Brooklyn Nets on Friday night. Jack Borman and I break the whole game down. Will Anthony Edwards be suspended for Sunday's regular season finale? We'll talk about that next.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of the daily Locked On Wolves podcast. I'm in for Luke Idman again tonight on the postcast here with Jack Borman, who's live from Target Center. First off the top, before we get to the game and everything that happened, tonight's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. All right, so setting this one up. The Timberwolves come in, of course, winning last night in Memphis, a massive win. Still have a shot at getting as high as fifth in the Western Conference. And for the most part, control their own destiny coming into the game, for the most part. And at least in terms of getting out of the play-in, which is the biggest thing. Of course, a super shorthanded Brooklyn team. We could spend the whole first segment talking about all the guys that were not playing for the Nets tonight. A lot of guys that nobody has ever heard of, two-way guys, etc. And yet, and the game was never really in doubt. The Timberwolves played great. We'll talk a little bit about that off the top. But the headline is Anthony Edwards picks up his 18th technical foul of the season. And if it's not rescinded, and we could talk about whether or not we think it will be, he doesn't play on Sunday against the Jazz. And the Timberwolves have to beat the Jazz to ensure that they're out of the play-in. There's a couple different ways this could go, of course, and there's still games ongoing now that we'll talk about a little bit later. But we have to start there. Apologies to Rudy Gobert, who we'll talk about. He tied his career high. He had a season high in this game, but tied his career high with 35 points. We will get to Rudy, but we have to start with Anthony Edwards. Does his technical get rescinded? What does this thing look like as the Wolves, take on the Jazz on Sunday?
Yeah, I expect we'll hear that tomorrow. There are no games in the NBA tomorrow, which is absolutely absurd that you have no games tomorrow and then 15 on Masters Sunday afternoon. But that is beside the point. I would expect to hear back from the league office on that. I have it on very good authority of exactly what Anthony Edwards said to Ray Acosta to earn that technical. He said, "Where's the effing foul, Ray?" That's what he said to get the foul or to get the tech from Ray Acosta. And so, again, I think from where I sit, Ant put himself in a position to get that technical foul. He was. I have no idea why he was wasting energy complaining when you're playing the Long Island Nets in this game. It's just, I don't know why you put yourself in a position to even get close to getting a technical foul. I mean, anyone that's defending Ant saying it was a quick tee or whatever, sure, it may have been, but he's lucky he didn't get teed up for clapping in the other ref's face in the first quarter. He then hung on the rim for about 5 seconds, which most refs are pretty quick to call a technical foul on. So I don't know if the league will take that into consideration when weighing whether to rescind the foul or rescind the technical foul or not. But yeah, I think, it's just a complete, lack of composure and leadership moment from Anthony Edwards. And it's just so disappointing because he, went for a while without getting a tech, went like 12 or 13 games without getting a tech, then picks one up and knew that he was in this position. And, look what happened the last time the Ant got a technical foul. The Timberwolves are already down Rudy Gobert and Julius Randle. They lost to Utah in Utah. And that game, it weighs really heavily with what we're about to get into for the rest of the game. So I think, weighs really heavily for the rest of the season in seeding. So, I just am so disappointed that Ant put himself in that position and was a really bad teammate tonight by doing that and potentially setting himself up and putting it in the league's hands whether or not he's going to play on Sunday and what will be the Wolves' biggest game of the year to that point. So it was just a horrible moment from Anthony Edwards, and I really hope that he takes accountability for what happened and makes a huge change next season because leading the league in technicals by I think 2 or 3 now is completely inexcusable for a guy who, just needs to understand that his whistle is what it is, and he can't keep costing his team like he has at several different moments this season.
Yeah, and I don't know when I guess I have two things. I don't know when they consider rescinding a technical foul if they take into account the other stuff that's happened in the game. My guess is they talk to the officials. I don't know this, but they probably talk to the officials and say, hey, why'd you call the tech? Take into account all that. And if that's the case, you're 100% right. When he hung on the rim, I was like, okay, he knows what he's doing. He's playing with fire, and it's almost like he's daring the refs to call it, which is dumb in the first place, but really dumb when you know that one more you get suspended for a game that your team really needs to win. And I also, at the same time, I do think that was kind of a weird time. Like, and maybe in the official's mind, it's like he's not going to stop until we give him one, apparently. So we'll just give him one, right? Like, it was weak that they gave him one in that instant, but he was kind of asking for it. Maybe this is too hot of a take, but I'll give you this. Maybe it's better that it's not rescinded, because then he's still got he's got a cushion in the playoffs. Like, if he gets one technical, he's not suspended, right? Like, I don't think it resets, does it?
It does. It does reset.
It does reset. Does it go back to like basically like zero?
So yeah, it's not. And then I don't think there's really any chance of him getting a technical related suspension in the playoffs. Yeah.
Yeah, and like that. I mean, yeah. So all that to say,
you can't get hurt.
Right. Yes. Yeah. This was not the moment for that to happen for Anthony Edwards. Not at all. The other thing that happened in this game that was notable was Rudy Gobert's 35 points on 17 shots, a career high, tied a career high of 35 points. We got to see the crowd go crazy with the Rudy Gobert chants, the Rue chants in the fourth quarter, trying to get him to the career high. And then actually you could see, I don't know if you were able to see this or saw it in the arena, Jack, but on the broadcast, they showed Nickeil Alexander-Walker at that timeout that Brooklyn called, was apologizing to Rudy Gobert apparently for not realizing that. Like, the last play before the timeout was called, Nickeil took the ball to the basket, got called for a travel. And then he was like talking to him. You could see him pat his chest and go, my bad. And clearly, like, he realized somebody told him that Rudy was going for a career high. Maybe he saw it on the scoreboard. I don't know. But huge game for Rudy Gobert. Awesome performance. He was a big reason why this game was not close by halftime.
Yeah, for sure. I think, I'll do respect to the Nets. But if you get in a situation where, the Wolves are clip farming to get Rudy Gobert a career high in points, at that point, when do we just sim to the end of the game? But really, really fun to watch the Wolves just continue to find Rudy. And I think it was just a cool way for the team to kind of recognize him. Like, obviously, yes, he was absurdly dominant in this game and certainly was open in the flow of the offense quite a bit, which was great to see. But they did obviously make a point to feed him kind of in that fourth quarter. But I do really think that it was a good recognition of the stretch that Rudy Gobert has played really the last 3 weeks to a month, which, we talked about last night. You could argue that very well could have been, his best stretch as a Timberwolf. And I think tonight was just kind of a microcosm of everything that he's done really well. I think, the Wolves kind of taking the ball or taking Rudy Gobert out of those high pick and roll actions and playing him a little bit more in the dunker spot. So guys are able to drive a little bit more and then find him on those, over penetrations or little dump off passes when the big and drop coverage commits to the driver. So just really cool to see them continue to feed him and Rudy pay that off. But for him, tied a career high with 35 points in 33 minutes. It was only the second time in his career he's had at least 30. And he absolutely blew his previous Timberwolves career high out of the water, which was 26. He had done that 2 different times. So it was great to see him really set a new high watermark tonight. But again, I think if Rudy Gobert continues to play this type of level on the offensive end of the floor, as aggressive as he's been on the offensive glass, which has been super evident the last couple of weeks, and then, just the way that the team continues to space the floor properly and create situations for themselves in which guys have clean driving lanes and then can dump it off to Gobert inside. I just think it seems going to be really tough to contend with when you also think about the different defensive playmakers that they have and different schemes that they can play on that end of the floor. I think they can defend just about any team in the league pretty effectively, which is obviously something that's good to have. But I also think that Rudy Gobert becoming a little bit more of an offensive weapon and some of the short roll passing stuff that you talked about last night through a lob to Jaden McDaniels cutting out of the corner, which was which was awesome. I think that was probably the first alley-oop that Rudy Gobert has thrown in a Timberwolves uniform. At least that was successful. Yeah. So that was really fun to see. And I think, again, just kind of speaks to how much he's grown as a passer and a playmaker. So I thought it was kind of a fun, coronation game of everything that has been good for Rudy Gobert, and just where would they be without Rudy in a lot of these games? I think he's just been just a ridiculously good floor raiser for the Timberwolves in these games against teams below 500 that they absolutely should beat. He continues to show up night after night in these games with just a heightened sense of professionalism, and kind of refuses to let the Timberwolves lose in some of these games. And tonight was certainly one of those games. And all the credit in the world to Rudy for bringing it tonight. And hopefully he continues to play at this level for as long as the season goes.
Yeah, I think as guys have played longer with Rudy, like just watching the game tonight, I was thinking, it really feels like Rudy's hands have gotten better over the course of his Minnesota career. But I think it's more guys have understood where he likes the ball and where, like, remember his first part of his first year in Minnesota, D'Angelo Russell would throw him bounce passes at his knees when he's rolling to the basket. And that's never, go back to his Utah days, that was never a fruitful play for Rudy Gobert. He's much better at catching lobs, at catching, basically his chest and higher is where you want to throw him the basketball. He's not going to go down. And this is true of most bigs, but like especially true of Rudy. And, I talked to people who follow the Jazz, and they at the time, and they were like, yeah, I mean, his hands are okay. They're probably not as good as you'd like them to be for as many times as you want to throw him lobs, but it feels like he's gotten better and better. And I do think there's something to teammates just being more comfortable. And like we've seen that with Dante DiVincenzo very quickly this year, from looking really uncomfortable playing with Rudy early on to now being, recently, I think being one of the more frequently, assisting players to Rudy on lobs and on passes to the dunker spot. So I think that's been really, really fun to kind of see that progression. All right, next we'll get into some of the playoff conversation. We'll talk about some of the results around the league and where the Wolves sit now. It's going to be fun. And then we're going to talk a little bit about who do we want? We'll look at the comments. Who does everybody want the Wolves to face in the first round and why? We'll get into all that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves on the Postcast is brought to us by our friends at FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are almost here, just a week away, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. FanDuel makes betting extremely easy. Maybe you're just picking the Wolves, you're just hammering the Wolves Sunday against Utah into the playoffs next week. Maybe you're just diving into the player props in-game. Maybe you're taking Anthony Edwards three-pointers over. Unfortunately, he won't get a chance to cement his three-point title on Sunday unless that technical foul is rescinded. Maybe it's steals, assists. FanDuel has a ton of different ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine your live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. All right, let's talk a little bit about what's going on around the league right now. Of course, there's, 3 games that we're really paying attention to as of now. Denver beat Memphis already tonight in a game that the Grizzlies led for much of it. So it's very likely now that Denver ends up being the 4 seed. We know Houston's going to be the 2 seed. That's who Denver plays Sunday, so nothing to play for the Rockets. And Denver, I guess it would take a few things would have to happen for them to not get the 4 seed. So they're still going to be motivated to win on Sunday. And then the other games that, of course, we're watching are let's see, we don't care about the Rockets game tonight. The Clippers are taking on the Kings as of right now, as we're recording this live. The Clippers are up by 3 with just under 10 minutes to play over the Kings. And the Warriors are up 20 at the end of the third quarter over Portland. So very likely a Golden State win, which we expected. And we were expecting a Clippers win, although obviously both the Clippers and Kings have something to play for. So by the end of the night, we'll have a pretty good sense, or we'll know exactly what the Wolves need to do on Sunday to make sure that they're out of the play-in and possibly get all the way up to the 5 seed in the West.
Yeah, just really quick to jump in. Just from down the hall, Anthony Edwards said that he has a good relationship with Ray Acosta and that they talked it out afterwards, and that both he and Chris Finch are hopeful that the tech gets rescinded. That's from Chris Hine. So, but yeah, I think just a huge bummer that the Grizzlies couldn't get it done tonight. I mean, they gave up like an 11-0 run and totally just fell apart at the end of that game. Looked super tired. Obviously, playing at altitude, second night of a back-to-back is tough for them. But the formula is pretty straightforward for the Wolves right now. And I can I can give it to you here. So right now, it is a tighter game than I would have thought in Sacramento. The Clippers are up 3 on Sacramento. So let's assume that the Clippers beat Sacramento. The Warriors are going to beat the Blazers tonight. So then if the Wolves win on Sunday, which we all expect should happen, even if Ant is not in there. So the Clippers and the Warriors play on Sunday, and that's a massive game that both teams will have to play for. So if the Clippers beat the Warriors, the Wolves would be the 6th seed and play the Lakers in Los Angeles, game 1 next weekend. And then if the Warriors win that game, the Wolves would be the 5 seed and open in Denver, which I think certainly would be the preferred outcome if you're the Timberwolves, and at least thinking about the first round series, maybe rather than the second round series. But the only difference there is that if Sacramento does pull it out tonight, Sacramento does have something to play for. They can lock up the 9 spot in the play-in tournament if they do win tonight. So they're certainly still playing for something. So if the Clippers were to win and then tonight and the Warriors were to beat them, then the Warriors would be the 5 seed. And the Timberwolves would be the 6th seed in play in Los Angeles. So still some scoreboard monitoring that's going on. But, I think if you're the Wolves, all you can do is worry about what you're doing. And that's try to take care of business against the Jazz on Sunday. And it's important to note, too, I was DMing with my guy, Tony Jones, who covers the Jazz and the Nuggets for The Athletic, one of my favorite people that I've met in basketball. He basically said, hey, the Jazz, can still get that top spot in the lottery. And that's important because they own the tiebreaker in the lottery over the Wizards. So if the Wizards lose on Sunday, I think they're playing the Heat, who have nothing to play for as well. And the Jazz lose to the Wolves on Sunday. The Jazz would actually get the tiebreaker, so they would be in that top spot in the lottery. And you might be thinking, oh, well, they flatten the lottery odds. Why does that matter? It matters because then if the Jazz have the top spot in that lottery, at worst, I believe they can be the 5th pick in the draft. But if they're in that 2 spot, they can at worst be the 6th spot in the draft, depending on how the lottery balls fall. So still important that the Jazz lose that game and that the Wolves win that game, because if the Jazz had nothing to play for, and they're already locked into their lottery spot, then one might be thinking, why wouldn't the Jazz just play everyone, try to beat the Wolves, screw them out of getting the 5 seed, maybe that knocks them down to the 7 seed, maybe even the 8 seed. And then that could be the difference of 6 or 7 picks in the draft this coming summer, depending on how that shakes out. And the Jazz obviously own the Timberwolves first round pick this coming summer. So a lot of interesting storylines there, but yeah.
So if the Wolves win on Sunday, so I'm not assuming they're going to win Sunday, but let's assume for the sake of argument to make this more clear, if they win Sunday, they're out of the play-in and they would be 5th or 6th, and they would either play the Lakers or Nuggets. That's pretty much locked in at this point, right?
Correct.
Okay. So I guess of the possible first round opponents, I guess the next most likely, if they don't win Sunday, they could finish 7 or 8, and then the Thunder and Rockets are possible playoff opponents. I guess it's theoretically still possible. It could be the Clippers or Warriors. But I guess let's take those 4 because I think those are the 4 most likely: Lakers, Nuggets, Thunder, and Rockets. I mean, let's rank those in order of who you would want to play if you're the Timberwolves. Who should the Wolves want to play between the Thunder, Rockets, Lakers, and Nuggets? Obviously knowing, they could play one of those teams in the second round if they were to advance. But if you're in the first round, Thunder, Rockets, Lakers, Nuggets, and, tell us in the comments who you'd like to see the Wolves play in what order. What would your ranking be, Jack?
Yeah, I think it's tough to argue with the fact that the Wolves went 4-0 against the Nuggets this season. And, Jokic, I think, played in all 4 of those games. Most of their guys played in a lot of those games. So, and also you have to consider the fact that the Wolves are pretty comfortable. They won 3 times in Denver in the playoffs last season. So I certainly think that would be the first choice if you're a Timberwolves fan, just because I don't think that you can worry too much about the second round when the most important thing in the playoffs is just win one game and do that 4 times and get to the next round. And then, who knows what can happen. So I think it would be hard for me to put anybody other than the Nuggets number 1. I think after that, you'd probably put the Rockets just because of the lack of proven playoff performers that they have outside. Fred VanVleet obviously won a ring as a starting point guard for the Raptors the year that the entire Warriors roster had lower extremities explode. But I still think that when you look at guys like Jalen Green, Amen Thompson, Dylan Brooks, Alperen Şengün, just not a whole lot of guys that have proven, like Jabari Smith Jr., that like, hey, like I've done this in the playoffs and I've done this really well in the playoffs. So I think they would probably be number 2 for me. I think that would be just like World War III of a playoff series, considering how all those regular season games were this season. The Wolves went 2-2 against the Rockets this season. 2 of those games were incredible basketball games, which is awesome. And then I think, honestly, I would put the Thunder in the 3 spot. I would rather play the Thunder because I think the Wolves have, the perimeter defenders necessary to try to slow down SGA. And if you hold SGA to under 30 points, which sounds crazy to say, but if you hold SGA under 30 points, I just don't trust guys like Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren, and then who's your next best scorer after that, like Lou Dort to bang 4 or 5 threes, or
which has happened for the Thunder against the Wolves, but like, is it going to happen
take that in a playoff
7 games? Yeah.
Like if that's the determining factor of a playoff game, then like I think you live with that as opposed to SGA just carving you up. So, I think the Thunder have by far the best defense in the league. No question about it. I think that'll absolutely translate to the playoffs. But yeah, I mean, it's just hard for me to be like, yeah, bring me 2 of the 5 smartest basketball players who have ever lived, the greatest basketball player of all time, and arguably the best playmaker of 2 different generations in LeBron and Luka Doncic. So I would definitely have them last. And think about it too. Like, I think they would have 3 of the 4 best players in that series, the Lakers. And the Wolves may have, the next 7 best players in the series. But, having 3 of the 4 best players in a playoff series, I think certainly is a huge advantage.
Well, and there's, I wish that I didn't have the exact same ranking as you, and I can't even pretend like that's not the truth, because I was going to say the exact same thing. What I will say about the Rockets matchup, it would be a ton of fun. So on the flip side of what you said, where in a Wolves Lakers series, they may have 3 of the best 4 players in the series, and that's true. In a Wolves Rockets series, the Wolves would easily have the best individual player in the series, and that matters a lot in the playoffs as well. And you could argue that the Thunder would, and they would have SGA, and the Lakers obviously with Luka, but it's closer, right? Ant to SGA and Ant to Luka is closer than Ant to Şengün or whoever with the Rockets, whoever you want to put there. But the other thing with Houston is can they get under Ant's skin with the amount of length and athleticism and the way they play, or does it play into the Wolves' hands because the Rockets are? I just think they're the highest variance, most volatile team, and you could tell me the Wolves play the Rockets, and I don't think it would be shorter than a 6-game series either way, but I think they play that 7-game series 10 times and maybe each team wins 5 times. I think it would be a really fun matchup. It'd be interesting. The Rockets could be awesome and they could just kind of be a disaster. I just think they would kind of muck things up. And to your point on the Lakers, yeah, I mean, Luka is the best player on the floor easily in that series, and they also have LeBron, and they also have Austin Reeves. It's a much different animal than the Thunder, and not saying that the Lakers are for sure better, but there's also, we have no data on Wolves versus this version of the Lakers, and we did just see them not be able to stop Luka last year. It's not exactly the same thing, but I mean, you could argue that his supporting cast with LeBron and Austin Reeves, et cetera, is better than the Dallas supporting cast that he took to the finals last year. So, yeah, I mean, the Lakers would scare me the most, although there's also maybe a little more potential for, you get, like, Luka doesn't really get into foul trouble that often, but maybe LeBron gets dinged up and Luka's in foul trouble. There's maybe some more volatility there just because of some of that stuff, but you don't want to play with fire there. I think you got a much better shot against, obviously, Denver, Houston, and Denver's looked better already since the coaching change. So who knows? They're looking for lightning in a bottle. Who knows? We'll see what happens. All right, I think we want to put a bow on this by talking maybe a little bit more, kind of closing out what we're looking for on Sunday, and then we'll also talk Wolves Jazz. We'll do that next, and we'll close out the show for the night. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves Postcast is brought to us by Betterhelp. The show is sponsored by Betterhelp. Taking care of your mental health is just as important as taking care of your physical health, but traditional in-person therapy can be expensive, often ranging from $100 to $250 per session. That's where BetterHelp comes in. With online therapy, you get quality care at a price that makes sense, saving you time and money. Therapy isn't just for life's toughest moments. It can help with everyday stress, learning how to set boundaries, or developing positive coping skills. Having access to support when you need it can make a big difference. Your well-being is worth it. Visit betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. All right, so looking ahead to Sunday, we could talk Wolves Jazz, and then also, I guess, the other games we're watching Sunday. We touched a little bit on it already, but to your point earlier, Jack, the Utah is still motivated to lose the game. Obviously, that means the front office wants to lose the game. Maybe the coaching staff, the players are probably all thinking they're playing for jobs. So, the game tonight, the Brooklyn game, was never really in doubt, although Brooklyn jumped out to a 9-2 lead, and then very quickly there was a massive talent disparity. Something similar could happen Sunday. You just don't want them to hang around, especially if Anthony Edwards isn't on the floor. But Utah playing for that top, the top odds for the lottery and to ensure that they can't drop further than 5th in June's draft. And for the most part, they're healthy. I know they've been kind of intermittently sitting guys with random various injuries. They were actually fined by the NBA because of circumventing some of those rules with Markkanen and others. But the Jazz matchup Sunday, obviously the Wolves have to be careful. They lost them without Ant once already. Anything in particular you're looking for in the Jazz game?
Yeah, I think number one, just nobody getting injured, right? I think that's kind of what you hate the most about a lot of these games is you're not quite as worried about the result as you are just like, please, God, nobody get hurt. So I think that's the number one thing that I'm looking for. I think the other thing too, the Wolves, had some moments tonight where they really struggled on the defensive glass. They gave up 5 shots on one possession to the Nets tonight. And so I think certainly that's an area that you want to, clean up, because, Filipowski's in there, Kessler may play, having 2 bigs. I mean, those 2 guys have played on the floor together. Again, I have no idea if Markkanen's going to play. The only 2 guys that have been shut down for the season are Jordan Clarkson and Cody Williams. So, theoretically, anybody other than those 2 guys may be able to go. So that's certainly going to be important. And then I think too, like Keontae George and Isaiah Collier are both guys that can get downhill into the paint. And George is much more of a scorer, and Collier is much more of a playmaker. But I think, between those 2 guys and Colin Sexton, like there's just a decent amount of guard talent. So I think the Wolves are going to have to do a really good job of containing the ball in the perimeter, because if they don't, they start spraying the ball around to shooters. And Utah is a team that is capable of knocking down threes if all their guys are playing and ready to go. So that's certainly going to be the number one thing. If you can run them off the 3-point line, contain the ball in the perimeter, and then crash the offensive glass, I think you'll be in a pretty good spot, and hopefully talent can just kind of take care of the rest. But again, I think a lot of it hinges upon whether or not Anthony Edwards is going to go, because there have been so few games that Ant has not played in this year that it's just kind of hard to theorize how the Wolves offense might look without him out there.
Yeah, and I guess, we talked already about Rudy Gobert. We didn't talk really about Julius Randle earlier, but he had another good game in this one too, and made 5 threes again, which I don't know. I hope that this isn't just like him thinking he's going to take this many threes every game, but if he stays hot, great. I mean, they may need it on Sunday. So can the offense still flow, without Ant? That's a fair question. Does hopefully, Randle obviously is going to think he could take the keys to the offense, and that could be a big part of the game. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot that remains to be seen. As of right now, as of recording this, the Timberwolves are alone in 6th in the Western Conference. Golden State, though, is up 19 with 6 minutes to play against Portland, so they're going to win that game. The Clippers are up 8 with under 5 minutes to play, so that's a much closer game against Sacramento. And as we said earlier, Sacramento is still trying to hold on to the 9 seed and not drop to 10. They want to host the play-in game against the Mavericks. And the Clippers, of course, are currently a half game ahead of Minnesota. Assuming they hold on, they'll stay ahead of Minnesota. And the Wolves, of course, will stay ahead of Memphis. They'll be tied with the Warriors in the 6-7 spot. So all eyes will be on all those games Sunday. And on Sunday, we'll have the live postcast. Of course, every NBA team plays Sunday. There's round of 12 p.m. games, round of 2:30 games. I don't know who plays at what time, but everyone's going to be scoreboard watching. It's what the NBA wanted. It's what they're going to get on Sunday, and we'll see. We'll see if maybe that influences whether or not Anthony Edwards is on the floor Sunday. If the NBA wants all eyes glued to the TV from noon until 5 o'clock, I think it would help to have Ant on the floor. But anything else in particular you're watching Sunday? Any of those games that are most of more interest to you?
The Masters, frankly. I can't say there's a whole lot of basketball that I'm going to be watching outside of that Warriors and Clippers game. So
that's why they make the either go dual screens or you get the multi-view on YouTube TV. That's a good day for that.
Yeah, I will not. You will not see me at Target Center on Sunday, and we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, it's gonna be a ton of fun. We'll see. We'll know Sunday. By the time I'm back on Locked On Wolves podcast on Monday, we'll know when the Wolves are playing. Hopefully, it's not Tuesday night. Hopefully, it is next weekend as we get into the playoffs. If the Wolves are in the play-in, that would be Tuesday, right? I think there's the 7-8 games are both Tuesday.
I believe so because they don't want anybody playing on the second night of a back-to-back.
Right. Yep. And then the 9 and 10 would be Wednesday, but then I think they play on a back-to-back. The winners, I think Thursday play back-to-back. So
yeah, and then the playoffs start Saturday. The opening games are Saturday the 19th and Sunday the 20th.
There you have it. All right, we'll be live after every Wolves playoffs game on the Wolves postcast at Locked On Sports Minnesota on YouTube. Be sure to follow and subscribe. If you ever can't catch it live, you can find the postcast over at Locked On Wolves, the audio feed. I'll be back on Monday with the regular Locked On Wolves show. We'll do a post-game pod following Wolves Jazz on Sunday. We'll set up the playoffs for you and have a big week ahead at Locked On Wolves. A big thank you for watching live tonight or catching the audio after the fact, and we'll catch you next time on Monday, or I guess Sunday for the postcast, and then also on Monday.